Guys, thank you so much for joining me in another video. So as you can tell, based on the title, today we are talking about CELINE Spring Summer 2025 Women's Collection. So it is titled Un été français, meaning French summer. This collection is dedicated to Alberto. And he was a designer that worked with Eddie at CELINE, even at YSL for many, many years, but he had passed away earlier this year. And this film was shot in Compiègne, and I'm so sorry about mispronouncing that. The film was directed, shot, and filmed by Eddie, the makeup done by Aaron DeMay, hair Esther Langham, and colorist Alex Brownsell. So one of the major themes that we are seeing is France in the 60s. So this is shot in the Chateau de Compiègne. This is where Louis XV once resided. So you have this beautiful historical backdrop, but the fashion is centered around the 1960s. This is a theme that we saw in some of the earlier collections at CELINE by Eddie. We've seen him also dabble in the 1970s, but one of the prevailing themes that we are seeing in this collection, as well as in many CELINE collections, is Paris, left bank, 1960s. And there are many muses from this era which we will talk about, but one of them was Juliette Greco. And you can see how the models, the way they're styled, embody this singer style. When Eddie lived in the south of France, he photographed her as they were close neighbors. While we're seeing this 60s trend, this season in particular, this is something Eddie has been doing for quite some time, but I also think there is a personal connection. He was close neighbors, and he's had a close proximity to a lot of the figures of this time, of this era. And Juliette Greco, she wrote music with Serge Gainsbourg. Juliette Greco and Miles Davis were lovers. There were a lot of thinkers of that time that she was very close friends with. She was definitely one of the figures of the 1960s left bank era. And when I say left bank, it refers to this specific area in France. It's the south left bank of the river, known for its very rich cultural, historical, artistic significance. It attracted a lot of artists, a lot of philosophers, writers, musicians, as well as young people and students. It contrasted heavily with the right bank, where the rich and sort of the business side of Paris was located. The second theme I want to talk about is this idea of a femme fatale. The song used here is Femme Fatale from 1966. It's by Velvet Underground and sung by Nico. And this was actually a song requested by Andy Warhol to Lou Reed, who wanted to write a song about Eddie Sedgwick. And so you kind of see that there are hints of the 60s mod style present here. Even just if we look at the style of the singer Nico, she was definitely a point of reference as well. She, like Eddie Sedgwick, had this femme fatale quality herself. She has this very beautifully haunting voice. She has a very striking beauty, but there's also something very dangerous and mysterious about her. And Eddie Sedgwick also kind of has almost this girlish, innocent look about her, but there's also something a little bit dangerous about her. Again, that kind of woman who's very charismatic, but she's also a femme fatale. This collection is also referencing Françoise Hardy, who is also a muse for Eddie, and you can see her in so many collections, definitely on the mood board, but she had passed away earlier this year, so you can see how there are ways that this collection also pays tribute to her. But this whole theme of this 60s style, in previous videos I've talked about the music movement, the yeah music movement, much like how the British had their rock music scene. The French, they had this specific genre of pop music led heavily by these French female musicians, and they had this really specific look in the 60s. Think like blunt bangs, thick eyeliner, cute little dresses. And again, this was also a style that was also heavily referenced in that 2000s indie music scene. Yes, there is the 60s, but there's also that 2000s indie era as well. When we look at the specific fashion here, what we are seeing are a lot of mini dresses, mini skirts. When I look at a lot of these figures of this time period, like a Brigitte Bardot or Françoise Hardy, they wore often shift mini dresses that often showed off their figure. Some had more of a baby doll, very feminine, playful, charming quality about them. He also mentions the 2000s music scene, how the youth dressed. Those cute little baby doll dresses, flared skirts. I recently did a video on Alexa Chung's style. You definitely see hints of that here, but I do think overall it's like 60s, but there is a common through line with that 2000s indie style. But he's also very commercially minded, and obviously not every woman is going to want to show off their legs because these skirts and these dresses are very, very short. There's also some longer skirts that hit the knees. On probably most people it would be probably below. If you want to be a little bit more conservative and modern, modest. They're longer A-line skirts, dresses. We're also seeing a lot of 60s sets, coordinated jackets and skirts. We're also seeing cardigan sets, nice summer cashmere sets. We're also seeing animal prints. When I think about a lot of the figures of this era, they had an appreciation for animal prints. I feel like in every Celine collection, there's always going to be something animal print or leopard. We also have this snakeskin skirt, again, almost in every Celine collection. If it's not a leopard skirt, it's a snakeskin skirt. We're also seeing a lot of really beautiful beaded, ornamental, embroidered, sequined dresses here, or tops or skirts. There's this love of the metallics, and I think I see in particular this silver dress that makes me think space age, but it also feels very party girl to me. A lot of these looks here could be easily dresses that you wear to a party. Your legs are free so you can dance and move around, but you're also gonna sparkle and glisten at night. I think it really works. And one of my favorite looks was this. It almost looks like an Art Deco or maybe even like an Art Nouveau sort of pattern. This kind of like moth wing pattern here. I know this is like a 60s collection, but honestly, I would love to see Eddie go even further back in time, reference other decades as well. I think he's really good at looking at the past, seeing how it's like relevant and desirable for the times we are in. This was actually one of my favorite looks. Again, I love these gloves and I love how like the bracelet is over top of it. Another point I also want to talk about is La Chamade, which is a book that Eddie was referencing also with this collection. I just watched the movie adaptation because I was super curious about this. It stars Catherine Deneuve, who's also a major figure of that Paris 1960s scene, and she's very close to like Yves Saint Laurent. But there are definitely looks from that movie this collection was inspired by. There's this sequin dress that she's wearing, and there's just this birthday party scene, and a lot of the dresses worn by these women look like Eddie took inspiration from this kind of party scene of the 1960s. Yves Saint Laurent did the costumes for Catherine Deneuve. And I also thought this very beautiful crocheted baby doll dress where the model, she's with the lamb, so impractical, wearing this very beautifully crocheted or embroidered dress. It's just kind of giving us gentle, innocent image, and then the lamb is wearing a bow, which leads me to my next point. We have bows. Again, bows have been something that have been trending for some time, be it simply the way you tie a silk or a sheer type of scarf into a bow, bows on dresses. It could be in the form of these straps or just these really big oversized bows. We saw this last collection. I really like this baby doll dress with just this exaggerated bow. Another theme that we are seeing that we pretty much see in every Celine collection. He's been doing this theme for years, since his YSL days, since his Dior days, this love for the tuxedo. Again, he loves tuxedos for women since his Dior days, very also YSL. But what he also really likes are these cute little tuxedo dresses. I've always wanted one of these from him. I think they're really cute, and again, in like a shorter hemline, so adorable. Another theme that we are also seeing is these moments, these peaks of ruffles. Yes, we have these ruffled shirts, but they're kind of peeking out or emerging out of some of these jackets. Have this ruffle moment peeking out of a dress, these ruffles flouncing out of these shift dresses. I think it just adds a nice movement and visual interest. Another theme we are seeing, this whole collection we pretty much saw mostly kitten heels. The first look we saw these really cute leopard kitten heels, also came in patent black, and then there were these kitten heels with these toe caps in leopard or in crystal. Thought those were super fun. But we also saw these Western-esque boots. He always loves a good Western boot, and I think the way they're styled with tuxedos or like a leather pant, they just work. Again, we didn't see a lot of skinny jeans or a lot of pants, and if we did, the looks were meant to be very elevated. And we also had these really interesting cat-eyed sunglasses that was very present throughout this whole collection. And then we also have these headbands, which I thought were super interesting. Again, it kind of gives me like Bridget Bardot vibes. Also thought that beauty, hair, and makeup was super fascinating. There was this very blunt matte black eyeliner done on the waterline, that with a blunt bangs. There's this really girly, doe-eyed, borrowed from the 60s kind of feel to it, but also feels mid-late 2000s, like I think of Alexa Chung or something. And with that, the models have like either just a soft nude lip or a pale lip, but the definition, it's all about the eyes and a nude lip. I just love the makeup from this era. And then with handbags, so the first bag that we saw, and probably the most heavily featured handbag, was what was called the Teen Josephine, and it's done in croc or other exotics from what I saw on the runway. It's very 60s, a continuation of this era. It has that similar shoulder bag that we saw with the recent Garance bag, but the Triomphe logo isn't as pronounced. It's gold. And then this next bag, I don't know the name of it, so I'm just gonna call it this vintage-esque lady bag. Again, also in croc or alligator, some kind of exotic here. And while I do love the Triomphe logo, I love the reference of it, I think Celine also does non-logo bags really, really well. But if you prefer the logo, we have the Triomphe a little bit more pronounced in this sort of east-west. It's not quite like a barrel shape, it's more kind of like a rounded triangular east-west type of style top handle, but it's got that Triumph clasp. Next we have this top handle giving vanity vibes. Again, the shape very 60s. Next we have what I'm gonna call the Neo clasp bag. Reminds me of the Phoebe Philo era clasp bags, which was also very reminiscent of vintage styles. This style, it also looks like it has the logo on the bottom. And then we have this rounded top handle type of bag as that Triumph against gold hardware closure. And then another point I want to bring up is they're going to release a new fragrance, Unité Francais. From what I understand, is going to be released in 2026. On Instagram it states, this is Eddie narrating this, Unité Francais came to life at my beach house in Ramtuelle with its perfumed garden facing the sparkling Mediterranean, bathing in summer languor, listening to Nico, Birkin, Hardy. It's the memory of Greco, whom I loved, met, and photographed in Saint Germain 10 years ago, and who lived just a stone's throw from me in her house in L'Escalier. Unité Francais is a nostalgic tribute to the 6 summers spent in Saint-Tropez, but also to teenage memories of the beaches of the Côte d'Azur with first loves, gold and sunburned skin beneath a veil of ambered cream. And Unité Francais, or a French summer, is actually a phrase used in Francois Sagan's novel La Chamade. And after watching the film adaptation of this, to me it is very much about how summer love is beautiful and passionate. It's something you feel in your youth, but it's also fleeting. It's a special memory you will always have, but it's not always necessarily going to be something that will be long lasting. And what was very interesting at the end of the film, we see these beautiful models wearing these beautiful clothes, and then it's a shot of this beautiful space with the chandeliers, and then they come crashing down. It makes me wonder if this is symbolic of something, if this romance at Celine is coming to an end, and it just could be representative of what this collection's named after. Personally, I really did enjoy this collection. I thought it was a very Eddie Slimane collection. I like the 60s direction, and I have to say, looking at a lot of these heritage brands, of all the heritage brands, and of course I'm like super biased saying this, but this has probably been my favorite collection thus far. Of course, we still have more fashion month. In terms of silhouettes and how I see myself dressing, I definitely want to wear some cute little 60s baby doll party dresses. Like, I can definitely see myself picking up something like that. Personally, I would love to see him stay at Celine. This could potentially be his final swan song. One tidbit of information I had heard, rumor, but you know, one tidbit I did hear was that Eddie apparently has moved to Paris, which I think is super fascinating, because if you remember that Business of Fashion article where they were talking about Eddie working at Celine, and he often likes to stay in the south of France. He likes to work wherever he's living. Prior to that, he lived in LA and he had a studio in LA. That was for Saint Laurent. I do wonder what is bringing him back to Paris. If this is a true rumor, right? What was so enticing for him to come back to Paris? Definitely makes me wonder what he's up to next. Anyways, guys, that is my video. Thank you so much for joining me in another one, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.